Oh, man.
Hey, Old Man on the Mat crew. This is Tony Jones coming at you with another great episode of Old Man on the Mat. Guys, yes. I'm not going to jump in all that, but yes, I am fired up. As you guys hear me all saying all the time, why I'm so excited. I'm fired up about the guest we have on today. He came out before. But before we jump into that, guys, like I always say, guys, thank you so much for all the support you guys given us on the merch and everything else. We've run out a few shirts, and that's huge. Appreciate all the great feedback, guys. Our website, once again, is oldmanonthemat.com, oldmanonthemat.com. And we're flying everywhere, man. But I appreciate you guys so much. And back, like I was saying, I'm really excited about the guy that's going to be on today. He was on before with us, and I really appreciate him setting the time to do it. I know you guys remember him because I know with the number of views he had, it was huge. So I know you guys know who he is. This is my guy, Quintin Torres, who's known as the sports performance specialist. All right, guys, here's Quintin. How you doing, brother?
Hey, Tony. How you doing, man?
I'm doing real good, man. Real good. Like I was telling you a little bit ago, I'm a little bit under the weather, but I'm still excited about life, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Oh, man. But you know what? Our last time you were on here, and the feedback I was getting from so many people was really cool. I was impressed because I love to know that people listen to the episodes, but the questions that these guys were talking about, that tells me that they were listening. You know what I mean? They were paying attention to stuff you were talking about. Especially when we were going back and forth about the ball test you do, and I was talking about that a little bit. The thing you had me try. You sent me over that video, and I do have to post that. If you can do me a favor when we get off here, shoot me that again so I can shoot that out, and I want everybody to see that test you're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, man. So, what do you have for us this time? I know last time we were talking about, the balls of your feet being your strength points, right?
Yeah. I think we were kind of covering a lot. We were kind of doing like a breakdown of longevity. What's the biggest thing that was taking away people's longevity in martial arts training? I was going in on the importance of the feet and foot strength, how that's like a key aspect to longevity that not a lot of people really focus on training.
Right. Now, a question for you too. How do you stretch your ankles? And I know this is jumping over a place. The reason I'm asking is because someone asked me that. How do I stretch my ankles? And I'm like, I don't know. How do you stretch your ankles when you're doing this? So you have to have mobile ankles, correct?
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that we test with our athletes, but like at least for in person, because I can't run certain tests like online.
Okay.
We do different flexibility tests, especially ankle extension, which is your ability to point your ankle, kind of like a ballerina. And there's actually there's two particular stretches that are really effective. One is just sitting on your kind of like sitting like a samurai, like on your ankles, like on your knees, and your butt all the way to your heels. And you don't want your toes to touch each other. You want like 3 inches of space between your big toes. And what's ideal is you want your ankles, like where your ankle kind of connects to your foot, like that bridge of the foot and ankle complex. You want that to be able to be flat to the ground.
Okay.
And that's one of the areas that we test and we'll measure because your ability to extend your ankle is huge for the amount of force you can generate through the ground, whether it's for like running, sprinting, jumping, things along those lines. And it's actually kind of funny. Do you know what kind of athletes struggle with ankle flexibility the most?
No, which ones?
Wrestlers.
Really? Wrestlers?
Yeah. Every time I train a wrestler, they always have issues going on with their ankle flexibility, with their ankle extension. And I think it's because of the way they wrestle.
Okay.
They're always so there's like dorsal extension, like your dorsal is like your ankle, foot and ankle complex. So extension is pointing your toe, and dorsiflexion is like lifting your ankle up.
Okay.
And if you look at wrestlers, they're always under intense dorsiflexion when they wrestle because they're hunched over. The feet, especially their front foot's generally a little flat to the ground, and that really creates a lot of stiffness in the ankle. And so, hockey players usually have the most flexible ankles, surprisingly.
Hockey players, really?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure why that is. Even though they're always stuck in dorsiflexion, but I know hockey players usually have really good ankle flexibility. But wrestlers, consistently, when I measure wrestlers, I usually count on their ankle extension to be pretty limited.
Really? You would think it'd be the other way around because hockey players are in those boots, all the
Right,
time.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just stiff. Holy cow!
I think
Now,
it has something to do with the big toe.
really?
Uh, yeah, it's another side effect I noticed with hockey players, that they're notorious for having really weak big toes. And I think it's because when to skate with a lot of velocity, so when hockey players kind of explaining it to me, like your big toe has to be lifted up. Like you
Really?
can't like dig your big toe in. And so I think their big toes get weaker. And if you kind of flex your big toe upwards, kind of
Yeah,
like
I'm
a
doing.
raptor claw, you'll kind of feel this tendon on top of your foot go all the way to your
Yeah,
ankle.
yeah, I'm doing that now. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's usually really weak, and I think that weakness in the tendon gives them a little bit more lax in the tissue, giving them that flexibility.
Wow. Okay. I was so fascinated by what we were talking about last time when you dove into the feet because I just don't understand that. I mean, like you try to build up all these different other muscles of to get you faster, stronger, and everything else, but it just comes down to your feet. But I guess it does make sense because that's your connecting part to the earth, right?
Yeah, there was actually like an interesting, like here's like an interesting way to think about it. So I kind of realized this. Have you ever seen this Amazon show on Amazon Prime called The Boys?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Good,
Great
decent
show.
show.
Yeah, I
Really
like it. I
good.
like it. I really enjoy that show. I'm a superhero geek.
Yeah, and there's this one scene where Homelander gets I think it's like he gets like a bus or a train car like thrown on him,
Mhm.
right? Like they kind of set him up on an ambush, and he's
Okay.
supposed to be like this, like he's supposed to be like Superman,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah, that's his character. Yeah.
And so they drop it on him, and it just crushes him. It doesn't kill him, but it just flattens him to the ground. And I was thinking about like, okay, like why didn't he just stop it?
Yeah.
Why didn't he use his super strength to stop it in its tracks? Like, why did it take him out so fast? And then I was kind of thinking about it. I was like, well, he has nothing to leverage against. He's just floating.
Mm.
So how could he create any force to stop like an object in motion? There's no equal and
Okay.
opposite reaction. So if he was connected to the ground, he would have been able to stop it. I know it's a super weird sort of way to kind of
Yeah,
like
I know, but it's okay.
think
Like
about things.
we can relate to that. We watched that show.
Yeah, but that is kind of like that is like sort of like an over exaggerated analogy on how the feet really help you when it comes to generating force for athletics, because it's the only thing that's going to leverage that's going to create leverage from like a solid object, which is like the surface underneath you.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. Because I used to watch those cartoons and think about it. Superman flying in the air, and he catches the things, and he doesn't move. I'm thinking,
Mhm.
okay, now that you bring that up, I'm thinking he's not pushing off anything,
Yeah, yeah, the physics wouldn't exactly work unless he had
right?
some sort of like propulsion or something like that.
Now I'm disappointed now.
Yeah, I know, it kind of shatters it a little bit.
Right? Like, damn it. But man, that's awesome, man. What some things I was thinking about and I'm talking about in my training. I know we're going to jump around a little bit, but because I've been trying to think of some things that I could get free advice from you. Hint, hint, hint.
Yeah, yeah.
But because in doing training, I grapple a lot. Brazilian jiu jitsu, so I'm grappling a lot. How do I, build my cardio for that? I do like maybe 3 times a week. I try to do a 5K. I've been trying to do 5 days a week, but that's been killing me. But 3 days a week, I'm trying to do a 5K, trying to build up my cardio. What's the best way to build my cardio for grappling?
Oh man, this is all right. So if people are viewing, this is gonna be some sauce. I'll give away some secrets on this one.
All right, brother. Cool. Appreciate it.
So, so a lot of my cardio development is what I've learned from like the Soviet Union periodization methodology. And what you want to do is you got to figure out what the VO2 max and what the HR max is for the athletes. So there's a couple ways to do this. You can do like a Cooper's test, which you'll need. It's helpful to have a heart rate monitor. You don't absolutely need one, but you'll
Okay.
get a more accurate result. But you run around a track for 12 minutes and try to cover as much ground as possible in 12 minutes. And then at the end of 12 minutes, you have to measure how far the athlete was able to travel. So how many laps around the track they're able to do.
Okay.
And it also helps to get what their heart rate was from like when they started it, in the middle, like at the 6 minute mark, and then at the end of the 12 minute mark. And you can just take those numbers, their heart rate, the amount of distance traveled, and you can go into like just any website that's labeled like Cooper's test calculations.
Okay.
And this test was invented by a guy named Dr. Cooper.
Okay.
And from there, you can get an approximation of what the VO2 max is and what the HR max is, your heart rate max. And so, what you want to do is once you have those numbers, you want to spend a period of time developing the aerobic base. Like your energy system has 3 gears. Like think of like track and field. There's 3 events. There's like the 100-meter dash, which is your first energy system, your ATP system.
Okay.
Then there's like say like the 400 meters dash or 800-meter. That's like your anaerobic system. And then you have like the 1 mile run. That's your aerobic system. So you have the ATP, anaerobic, like these 3 energy systems.
Okay.
And so what you want to do is you want to develop the 3rd energy system, your aerobic, your oxygenative energy system. You want to expand that by a period of time. Maybe you do like 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks of 60 to 70% of your HR max. So 60 to 70% of your HR max beats per minute. You want to do that for at least 30 to 45 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week for a 4 to 6 week period.
Wow.
Because we're naturally aerobic based animals. If you want to think of that, like that's part of those part of the evolutionary mechanism that helped us survive is we can do persistence hunting. We can run a long distance at a steady pace better than just about every animal out there.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of that is because we can take in oxygen, we can convert that into energy very efficiently. We don't run on all fours. We're bipedal, so our lungs are upright. So like a quadrupedal animal, like a deer, they can't really jog long distance. They're designed to sprint because their organs smash into their lungs, and they can't respiratory regenerate their energy the same way we can.
Wow.
So and they can't cool off as quickly. Like we can sweat. We don't have a lot of body hair on us. A deer can't release energy, can't release heat as efficiently as a human being. So like ancient man used to run these deer down for like 30, 40 minutes at a time, and the deer would just eventually burn out, be too
Really?
tired to sprint. Yeah, and then we would catch up to it and start stabbing them to death.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it's called persistence hunting. And you can see like tribal people in like Africa like still do it till this day. A lot of like indigenous people that are still kind of living like just above the Stone Age, they still persistence hunt.
Wow. Holy cow.
So the point is that we're naturally aerobic based. Like that's our strongest energy system. Now the potential of the first 2 energy systems, your ATP and your anaerobic, will be limited in development unless that aerobic and unless the 3rd gear expands, because that will increase the potential of the first 2 gears.
Okay.
So if you don't do that, you'll only get your anaerobic, like your explosive energy, and your ATP and your anaerobic systems. Those are like your explosive energy. You'll only get them so strong, but they'll be limited unless you go through this process. And you also want to incorporate like once a week. Incorporate some high intensity interval training, something like that's like 30 seconds on, 90 seconds off, 10 to 15 rounds. So we're still keeping that circulatory system strong and conditioned.
Okay.
And so then you do that for a period of time, and then you want to up it. You want to up the ante. So an additional 3 to 4 weeks, you want to do 70 to 80% of the HR max, 30 to 45 minutes at a time, followed by 1 to 2 sessions of high intensity interval training. And that, if you can maintain that, and really stick it out, stay consistent, you will notice a huge improvement, like a permanent improvement in your cardiovascular system.
Really?
Yeah. And then once you have that built out, you can start incorporating more high intensity interval training on a regular basis, like 2 to 3 times a week, like circuit training, sprints, anything where you're going high intensity, then you have to replenish with a cool down period. And that's usually the fastest way to get your cardio up, and not just up, but it helps get it up permanently.
Okay. Yeah. So none of this. Well, I won't say none of this, but does that help? Where, like, say, you're grappling for 5 rounds, 5-minute rounds and things like that, and sitting out around between and all that, or staying in for all the rounds. You know what I mean? Does that help at all, or no?
Yeah, it could. So
Yeah.
it's very difficult to develop a proper energy system for, say, a sport, say competition, through
Okay.
just skill work training.
Okay.
Because there's other things that you have to kind of think about. Like you can't control the heart rate zones as specifically when you're just working skill work. And it's also really tough on the longevity because you're really putting your body through a lot to try to
Right.
get those cardio increases. Because
Right.
you got to think about the attrition rate. Like your body can only burn off so much energy at one time before it starts having a point of diminishing returns. So
Okay.
I notice like guys, well, think of this. If skill work was enough, how come every UFC fighter doesn't have like Frankie Edgar style cardio?
Good point. Okay. Good point. Very good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah, because you
So you
think
got
about,
to,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
I was just going to say, like, you got to do some crossover training. Like,
Okay.
you got to do it with, it really helps to do with the heart rate monitor so you can track
Okay.
the different energy systems, different heart rate zones to make sure that you're in the right zone for a right amount of time. If you can be very specific with this and stay consistent, like it really changes like your game. Like
Yeah.
I'm working with a guy, he's a jiu-jitsu purple belt, I think.
Mhm.
Just got him into the program, and we just implemented this cardio system. Like he just did his energy system test. We're about like a few days into it, and also being aware of the cardio. So here's an interesting thought that I'll really dive into. That if you watch like an MMA fight or a
Mhm.
jiu-jitsu match, you'll notice that whenever there's like let's use MMA as a prime example, you'll see that there's always like an engagement, like there's an engagement of offensive defensive combat,
Mhm.
and then that engagement only lasts so long. Like it
Right.
only lasts for like 5 to 8 seconds, and then there's
Yeah.
usually a break in action. Whether the
Yeah.
fighters separate, create distance, they go up against the fence, or a takedown happens and they hold a position.
Right.
So ask yourself, why don't they just keep going? Why do they stop?
Yeah. They don't have it. They don't have it in them to keep doing that.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
you'll feel that when you try to like say you try to take someone down in jiu-jitsu, you'll feel that after like 3 or 4 seconds, you're like, oh shit, this isn't gonna work. I gotta
Yeah.
back off or I'm gonna burn out. Like I'm gonna run out
Yeah.
of.
Exactly. To reset, calm down a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's your ATP system running out. You only
Okay.
have so much ATP. The human body can only run an ATP like explosive movement for so long. I think the max is maybe 20 seconds for a
Really?
super world class athlete. That's like a 200-meter sprinter.
Holy cow.
And that's really difficult to do. Like if you took your average guy and made him sprint 200 meters, that last 70 meters is basically a jog. Like you really
Really?
got to condition your body to do it. Yeah. Sprinting 200 meters is insanely hard.
I watch these guys in the Olympics, dude. I love watching track and field. And these guys look like they're like balls out the whole time, and
Yeah.
they're not, huh?
No, those guys are those are the outliers. Like
Okay.
they've been like for every like say like high level like D1 or Olympic sprinter, for every one of those guys you're watching on TV, there's probably like 1,000 guys that couldn't keep up and couldn't make the cut and get to that level.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
they
Yeah.
so there's genetics on top of insane work ethic, and years and years of adaptation. So
Okay.
but that's like an extreme example of the possibilities.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right.
But the average person only has about maybe like 8 seconds of really hard ATP work that they can put in, and then the lactic acid starts to build up. It starts burning. You're running out of
Yeah.
breath, and you start getting signals that you have to stop. You have
Yeah.
to go into a cool down period and start letting your blood resupply your muscles full of ATP, whether it has to do with through oxygen, which I think it's called the Krebs cycle, or maybe you got extra ATP cache before you hit like aerobic, before you switch gears into like an oxygenated burn. So
Okay.
if you watch MMA, and I was doing this with a stopwatch when I really figured out this cardio training, where I would take a stopwatch and I'd watch like UFC fights. And whenever the guys would engage, I'd hit the stopwatch, see how many seconds they would engage. And when that engagement would stop, I'd hit the stopwatch again.
Yeah.
And your average UFC fighter can engage for about 8 seconds, and then they need around 13 to 20 seconds of cooldown before they can
Okay.
engage again.
Okay.
And that's like that unspoken rule, like in MMA or jiu-jitsu, when action finally stops, you kind of surrender position and you guys both like rest, like up against the
Yeah.
cage on the floor. Right. Because they're on cooldown now. They
Okay.
can't push anymore. They have to resupply that explosive energy, and it takes time. And so that's what's happening in UFC fights. And the best fighters can shorten their cooldown time to a very low level, so they can do more takedowns more often, more strikes, more attacks, and that will
Okay.
compound and compound and compound on top of itself. So by the end of a 5-minute round, that guy is ahead on takedowns and on strikes landed.
Right. So it's the recovery time that gives them that. So that 10 to 15
Yes.
seconds. Okay. What's the
Yeah.
average? The guys that are not in in the UFC at those levels, that average time to recover from that
I would
burst.
the average for like your average Joe, I would say between like 15 to 20 seconds, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I noticed like really, really special guys. Like if you look at guys like Khabib, he's like a prime example.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah. The reason what makes Khabib so good, I was timing him. He can do around 8 to 10 seconds of action straight without stopping, and he can fully recover in about 8 seconds.
Wow. Holy
So
cow.
he can go 10 seconds on, 8 seconds off, and he can do that over and over and over again. So if you watch his fights, especially like say when he went against Edson Barbosa, like
Yeah.
back in the day,
Oh yeah.
he can just push more takedowns, and he can push more strength and more offensive attacks faster than the other guy can recuperate to defend it. And
Wow.
so that's how he's winning.
Yeah.
He's able to push more and more, and that leads to more takedowns, that leads to better positions. And eventually by the third round, the guy's just exhausted and he's getting just ground down to pieces.
Yeah. He looks like he's just always got that extra gear. That gear I call like the wrestlers have. You see
Mhm.
really good wrestlers, and they when it seems like they're getting tired, they amp up to that extra gear. You know,
Yeah.
uh, and that's what he seems like he does, man. He's like he's never run out of energy. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also wrestlers have there's other factors that play into it. Of course, you got like efficiency of movement.
Hmm.
You have your ability to stay calm, and conserve energy properly. And also you have like the mental stamina aspect to it,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you can force the body to keep going if you're mentally strong, if you're like conditioned to push through. And wrestlers have a sport where they usually have to push past that 8 to 10 second mark of action to get the takedown,
Yeah.
and but it's very difficult, and it's very it's what do they say, like if you a fighter that runs out of cardio is a fighter that will refuse to fight. Like
Okay.
cardio is everything.
Yeah.
Cardio is what bases your confidence. It's directly linked to your fight or flight mechanism. So a lot of times, if a guy's not hurt but he's just running out of cardio, like he's got nothing left, usually he's gonna quit because his flight response is gonna get triggered, and they're usually
Gotcha.
gonna retreat, or they're gonna freeze up. And you'll see that where guys, they'll just lay down and
Yeah, I've
they'll
seen
put
that.
their
Yeah.
hands out and they'll just let themselves get defeated
Yeah, I've
because
seen that. Yeah.
yeah.
Holy cow, man! But like you was talking about Frankie Edgar, those guys, man. Tell me a little bit about his training. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure you've studied him a little bit.
Yeah, so Frankie Edgar, there are some guys that are naturally gifted with their cardio. Frankie Edgar, he's a wrestler. He's
Yeah.
also an East Coast wrestler, so I feel like East Coast wrestlers are a little more notorious for their grit. Like East
Okay.
Coast and Midwest guys, you
Midwest,
got like
yeah,
your Ohio
Nebraska.
State, your
Yeah.
Iowa camps. They've always
Yeah.
been very strong with their conditioning and their mental fortitude.
Oh yeah.
I, and yeah, I think Frankie Edgar is just I think he's really good. I think he has like a good training regimen. I don't know how specific his cardio is.
Hmm.
I think he kind of has like a bit of a natural gift for it.
Okay.
He can really push the pace and he can recover really well. But he kind of has like his own flaws. Dominic Cruz also has a really, really good gas tank, and he
Oh
actually,
yeah, I used to love that guy, man. I still do.
yeah, and
He's not
he
fighting
actually
anymore.
does a sprint routine that he learned in college, and he never abandoned. Like he said, the sprint routine is a part of his secret sauce.
Really?
And
What does he do?
I don't know exactly what it is. I imagine
Okay.
it's like a 10 seconds on, 2 minutes off sort of thing.
Okay.
Like which is super effective for developing cardio.
Yeah.
Like if you want cardio improvements quickly, it's not the best way. Just start sprinting.
Really?
Start doing like 100 meters on, 3 minutes off, and try to get like 10 rounds of that. That'll boost your cardio really fast for like a couple days.
Or kill me.
Yeah.
Jeez. 'Cause I love watching him fight though when he was fighting because he seemed like he was always on his toes. He seemed like he was never tired. He always moved. It was great watching him, man. That in and out fighting, man.
Yeah. Yeah. He was super entertaining, and
Yeah.
he was a real innovator of the sport.
Yeah.
But there's a cautionary tale to Dominic Cruz, and I even made a video on it where he had some imbalances. If you look at Dominic Cruz's posture,
Hmm.
he got really rounded shoulders.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
he's got uh, he's got uh, um, he's got high arches in his feet, and guys
Yep.
with high arches tend to be weaker in the glutes, and you can
Okay.
really see that when he fights. His knees kind of cave in a little bit. It's called a
Hmm.
knee valgus. And
Okay.
that's a sign of a lack of glute strength.
Okay.
And when you have that disadvantage in your biomechanics, that puts a ton of shearing force on your ACLs.
Mm.
So his style came at a price.
Okay.
He had like multiple ACL tears. He
Ugh.
ripped his plantar fascia
Ah.
in one of his fights. Like completely ripped it off the bone.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, and he still had to fight 2 rounds. I don't know. I think he won maybe, or he might have lost. But yeah, his if you kind of like his style is super super taxing on the body.
Wow.
It comes at like a serious price. He started doing a lot better when he worked with after he worked with Sports Science Lab,
Okay.
and he started doing the nervous system training to fix his imbalances and to get him back into sport. He came
Okay.
back, and I think he fought the Korean Zombie and
Oh,
just
I remember. Oh,
absolutely
that's a great fight.
murdered him.
That was a great fight, man. Great
Yeah,
fight.
so yeah, you gotta. I think what a smarter approach is taking more like the TJ Dillashaw approach, where you
Okay.
only utilize advanced footwork in the moment instead of just keeping the advanced footwork nonstop.
Okay. Because he was
Yeah,
great too. He hasn't fought forever either. So I missed him. A lot of these older guys, man. Those were great brawls, man. Great brawls.
yeah.
Now you mentioned about the nervous system training that Dominic Cruz was doing. What did he do? How do you do? How do you do that kind of training?
So it was after I think his second surgery. I think he was in contact with George St. Pierre, or maybe he heard it amongst the circles, where
Okay.
George had a really good recovery from an ACL tear back in 2011. And George came back to fight, I think it was Nick Diaz,
Hmm.
and had like a really good performance. And Dominic Cruz, was needing help with recovery and was looking for a team of experts that would, really get him back into sport as quickly as possible, but do it in a very successful way. And Gavin McMillan used to be Marv Marinovich's disciple. Like
Hmm.
Marv and Edith Hughes invented the nervous system training methodology, and Gavin learned it from them. And Gavin runs a company called Sports Science Lab,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
he works with a bunch of high level athletes. And yeah, Dominic Cruz got into the system, redeveloped his feet, his foot strength, and a big part of the nervous system training is testing all the different areas of your body to figure out where your muscle weaknesses are.
Okay.
Because if you have weaknesses like in your hips, in your glutes, in your feet, in your core, in your obliques, the rest different parts of your body have to really compensate for the amount of kinetic energy that you're pushing through your body. And that compensation can lead to like overuse, overworking certain limbs, certain joints, and
Okay.
that can lead to breakdown and injury over time. So he got in the system, and you can watch it. You go on YouTube and just search Dominic Cruz Sports Science Lab. They documented the whole thing.
Okay.
It's a really cool video to watch, and he just went through the whole process. I think he did like 12 weeks with them. I think he did like 2 camps.
Yeah.
And I don't think Dominic Cruz really had an injury after that outside of the foot tear. And I think
Okay.
that's just, Dominic Cruz is also a tough son of a bitch. Like he's a
Oh yeah.
very mentally strong athlete and he'll push through anything.
So the nervous system training, can you dive into that a little bit more for me? Because I'm like lost when I hear that. I'm like, what's a nervous system training?
Yeah. Well, what aspects do you want me to kind of dive into?
You know,
Maybe I can.
talk.
Yeah.
Just like I like to learn everything on the kindergarten level. And what does that do for the body?
So the nervous system training is like a methodology that primarily focuses on like you have two types of strength, right? You have like the strength of saying pushing like a heavy object, like some weights or flipping a tire, and you have the strength that's like in your sport, like when you're running, playing soccer, or you're doing like a double leg.
Okay.
I guess that's like a very like a simple way to kind of explain it, but that type of strength comes from like sports strength or speed strength primarily comes from your nervous system. And it's like you're basically all strength is how your body can create like electrical energy. Like
Okay.
you like have you ever put like those sensors, on like your muscles and like they
Oh
shine
yeah.
muscles
Oh
and
yeah.
like
Yep.
your muscles will flex.
Yep.
Yeah, so your muscles like react to electricity. And I believe like a majority of electricity comes from like the power of your spine and
Okay.
your feet. And so what we do with the nervous system training is we primarily focus on developing nervous system strength. A major part of that is strengthening the feet because that creates, leverage, force generation. And we also want to focus on a lot of proprioceptive exercises. And that's what you're kind of experiencing with the ball work methodology because you
Yeah.
have to kind of balance the ball. It's very unstable. And so that kind of triggers your nervous system to generate strength, stability, like basically electricity at a higher level.
Okay.
And it has a huge emphasis on making the fascia and the muscle tissue very elastic, so you can recoil and push more kinetic energy.
Okay.
Taking care of weaknesses in your body that might be draining your energy or making your body perform worse, because of compensation. Like if you let's say if you have a lot of weakness, maybe like one of your oblique muscles on the
Mhm.
side of your core, that core muscle, maybe if that's like really weak, that like other muscles have to really compensate and that could zap your cardio.
Okay.
That could make you weaker. Or maybe your lower abdominal cavity is really weak and your lower back is really tight. That can really affect like the way you can do a double leg, the way you can press guys up against a fence.
Okay.
Where you want to try to eliminate as much weakness out of the body so you can start generating higher kinetic energy, more force. And so we have a very specific methodology for doing that. And primarily the philosophies, like I said, come from Dr. Edith Hughes, who invented like the balance pipe work, the slant board training, the ball work methodology,
Okay.
and Marv Marinovich. He really studied the Soviet Union's sports performance science studies that primarily dealt with strengthening the nervous system. A lot of plyometrics, a lot of neurological muscle patterning movements, a lot of the stuff you see like in Rocky Four,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they combined those two to create like the nervous system training. And yeah, that's basically what it is in a nutshell.
Okay. Yeah, you broke it down for me like a kindergarten. That's why I like because you know so much. Your guys like you know so much, but it's I think what's cool about you, like the last time we talked too, you broke everything down so I literally can understand what you're talking about, and that's really cool, man. That's really cool. That's why we probably have a lot of clients that way, right?
Yeah, well, I think that's also the reason why people really like my Instagram is because I try to take something that's very complicated and make it very simple for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it shit's really hard. That's why I use a ton of analogies.
Yeah.
Like the car analogy is the easiest for people to comprehend. So I'm always using the car analogy, to help people kind of understand like the physics of like the nervous system training in sports.
It makes sense. Because I tell you, when it comes to training and stuff, you hear so much stuff out there, you just don't know what to do.
Yeah. Here's a tip, and this is what I also do to double check all my information and also help me understand the information better. Like people really need to utilize AI more.
Really?
Like because I used to have to read so many goddamn books on like Russian performance training and like fascial training and try to decipher all the information.
Right.
And one night I was having trouble sleeping, and I was just sitting on my iPad and I was playing around with ChatGPT, and it just like dawned on me. I was like, wait a minute, this AI has access to the most accurate information all over the internet,
Right.
like textbooks, published studies, all of that, and it has access to it. So I was like, you know what? And I was like, I was like, chat, like, explain to me the most the most proven scientific principles on training methodology, and explain to me how like the Soviets conducted. I'm like, gather all the information of what works best as far as sports performance, from whole human history, from every country.
Yeah.
And the AI just broke it all down. You know,
Awesome.
it came up with all the studies that have the most success, the scientific principles that are the most proven, the methodologies that all the Soviets were able to duplicate and measure over and over again. And that's what I kind of utilized to really streamline this information. And the AI does a really good job of simplifying it for me. And that's a huge aid that I've been using
Yeah.
to help translate this complex information for people so they have a better knowledge on how to take care of their bodies.
That's cool. So you're man, you're probably one of the best trainers out there just with that information you're talking about, man. That's dang cool. Now,
Yeah, it's
do
really
you
accessible.
do you have a certain schedule that you would put these clients on? Like, say, for instance, someone walking in. I'm gonna use myself. Some good-looking guy walking in, trying to get in shape, trying to, at our age, trying to be more relevant and, with the better body, better exercise, better nutrition. Do you break everyone down the same way, or you have different things for each person? That you come in, you look at them, say, okay, you're going to try this for this many days, and this guy over here, you're going to try this for this many days. You understand what I mean? Or
Oh, that will depend on what their goal is, and
okay,
if there's a timeline to that goal, I'll take different approaches. If
gotcha.
like, let's is the goal just to generally get better at like
Yeah,
jujitsu? Okay,
yeah,
okay. So if there's no like competition deadline, I usually use the same process every time with guys where I'll want to focus. Like first thing is we want to focus on the feet, redeveloping and re-strengthening the feet and the neurological coordinations of the feet, and get them versed in the ball work training methodology.
okay,
That's going to really help with their neuromuscular efficiency. It's going to really raise their kinesthetic awareness. That's your ability to understand and move your body like in space and how to control your limbs, especially
okay,
under like a type of resistance. And that's what the ball provides. And then from there, once they're like well versed in like the ball work, we'll usually spend like 2 to 3 weeks on that, unless they have to go through like physical therapy or something like that.
okay,
Then we'll start implementing very specific exercises based on how they scored on the athletic assessment. And this is if I'm training them in person. In
okay,
person, we'll run an athletic assessment, test every part of their body, even their big toes, their foot strength, everything, internal, external rotation, and gauge if there's any weaknesses between like the two limbs.
okay,
Score it, get them trained in the ball work, the foot balance for a period of time. Once they're up to speed on that for maybe 2, 3 weeks, usually about like 2 weeks, then we'll start creating like a systematic plan on trying to get these weakest areas that they scored the lowest. We want to try to strengthen those the most. And
okay.
that's what's going to give you the biggest improvements on your performance.
Gotcha. What do you do different for the ones that are online? Because I know you have a huge online following. What do you do for those guys?
So a similar approach, like a lot of times we'll do a combination of physical therapy, pool training, and ball work in the beginning. Take care of the injuries, make sure that the areas that maybe got injured in the past, they don't like show up later on during the training. Because once you start getting into plyometrics and more intense explosive work, you really want to make sure that there's not a lot of weak links in the body, because because plyometrics can injure you if you're not doing them correctly or if you overdo it.
Okay.
So I really kind of do that: physical therapy, balance training, ball work training methodology, and then they submit me footage, and I kind of look at their technique, and I've gotten pretty good at like watching how people do the ball work and get an idea where their weaknesses are. So I
Okay.
kind of, based on what I see and my own like intuition, I kind of have like an idea of what we need to focus on. And it's really I'm really dependent on the feedback that the clients give me. Like if they're not giving me feedback, they're not like sharing a lot of information with me very consistently.
Yeah.
I'm going to be guessing a little bit, to be
Gotcha.
totally honest.
Yeah.
But if they're recording their sessions, if they're submitting footage on a regular basis, they're very responsive. They're telling me this is working, this is feeling good. Then we usually just stick to like the methodologies that are working best. Double down on the areas that they're weakest. Like let's say they're really strong, but they're not very quick. Then
Okay.
we'll really double down on quickness and speed and agility training, and do less strength training, do less isometric strength and plyometrics for a period of time until they start moving faster and they start feeling faster. I always look
Okay.
at every client kind of like a video game. We have like these stats. You have like stats for quickness, stats for speed, stats for
Mm-hmm.
strength,
Gotcha.
stats for injury prevention. And I kind of figure out like, okay, which area do we need to divert the majority of the athlete's energy to raise the weakest stat up? Because that's what's
Okay.
going to give them the most improvement in their game, the quickest. Because a lot of guys will create a style and they will fight in a certain way
Mm-hmm.
that revolves around their weak links.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
so say if like they have like a really bad gas tank, their cardio is not really that good. They're usually they're gonna pull a lot of guard.
Okay.
They're not gonna do a lot of takedowns. They play the long game in jiu-jitsu where they're very patient, and they wait for opportunities instead of attack.
Okay. Gotcha.
And or if maybe they have like a lot of weakness in like the internal external rotators of the hips, maybe their hip flexors are really weak, or maybe like they're just not very strong, or it's causing them pain, they're usually going to play less guard work, because those are the
Mm.
muscle groups that really count on like the guard being effective. And maybe they're going to be more they're going to emphasize more on takedowns and dominating like top position,
Okay.
and getting side control and stuff like that. So you're gonna manipulate your style around your weaknesses, whether you're realizing it or not. So if
Okay.
you can take care of those weaknesses, now a whole new style can start being exploited, and they can really start taking their game wherever they want it to, instead of being restricted based on these weak areas.
Gotcha. That's what one of the fighters that I was thinking out there, which we were talking about earlier, that like George St. Pierre, GSP. I think he has one of the best, just from my experience, just looking at this guy and all the stuff he's been doing. He looks like he's probably one of the most well trained athletes out there. Is that true?
Yeah, George is phenomenal. Like, let's keep it 1,000. Like, George is not only is he like very well conditioned, a great athlete, he's also like he's a really good guy.
Okay,
Which
yeah, it
is
seems like it. He seems like it. Yeah,
yeah, which I personally really appreciate. I really appreciate like a fighter that has like a good personality and has like a good like moral compass.
yeah,
Uh, but outside of that, like George is very very well conditioned. His on and off, like his engagement to cooldown period, is very close to Khabib's.
really,
He has a little bit better timing. But what's the interesting thing about George is that George actually has like really weak feet, or he had really weak feet for a really long time.
really.
Yeah, and I'm kind of guessing, but I watched a lot of George's camp with Sports Science Lab, and he was doing the nervous system training. And I could tell by the way he balances, by what his feet do when he does jump rope, and just by looking at his feet, I could tell they're not very strong. And so
Wow.
he's another example of a fighter that's really had to develop a lot more strength in the rest of his body to compensate for his lack of foot strength. But after he went through the Sports Science Lab protocol, and he really adopted that training. If you go on his Instagram now, George still uses the ball work training methodology. He still uses like the isokinetic accelerator. He still does the water training on a regular basis. He's just has like an insane work ethic.
Yeah.
He's even till this day, like, how old is George right now? He's got to be in his 40s right now, right?
Oh, easily. Yeah, he's got to be in his 40s. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's still running his ass off in Canada in the freaking wintertime, for fun.
Yeah.
Like
Jeez.
he's still busting his ass, like, just because he loves it. And he's tried a bunch of different training methodologies over the years. I used to be a
Yeah.
big George St. Pierre fan, even back when he was like rocking the knee pads. You
Yeah.
know, back
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
back
I
when they
remember
had, like,
that.
they had duct tape on their gloves.
Yep.
And I remember seeing George. He would do all different types of training methodologies. You know,
Yeah.
he was big on the skill work, right? And then he was like big into fitness. And I remember I bought his DVD, Rush Fit,
Okay.
way
Yeah.
back in the day.
Wow. That's an old one.
Yeah, man. I bought Rush Fit, man. I did it too. I was doing Rush Fit, and that was back like when like the Tap Out Crew had that TV show
Yes.
on Versus
Yeah.
Channel.
Oh,
And
man.
but George always has tried different training methodologies. Like he got really big into gymnastics,
Yes. I
you know,
remember that
for
phase.
yeah, and then he got really big into like Olympic lifting. And it was around the time he started doing a lot of Olympic lifting is
Mhm.
actually when he got that injury with his knee. Now,
Okay.
maybe it could have been something along the lines of, you know, he got knee barred and it kind of tweaked his knee and he had some compensation, which kind of led to it. But he's always had like weakness in his hips. You know, George, I remember always seeing that whenever George, whenever he win, he used to do backflips. Remember that?
Yes. I remember that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And when he would try to land his backflip, his knees would cave in.
Yeah.
And I would always look at that like before I knew like anything about like anatomy, I was like, what? I'm like, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had weakness in his glutes and weakness in his feet, and so he had that knee valgus, and that was kind of like a telltale sign that he was susceptible to knee injuries. But
Really?
yeah, he's just always trying new methodologies, and his timing, his skill work timing, and his mental fortitude is just really good. I don't know how well his cardio conditioning is. I
Mhm.
know he does like the sprint training routine with Faraz Sahabi, and Faraz, he's a
Yeah.
really intelligent coach. He's not as, let's say, anatomically on point with a lot of his ideas, but he's really on track with a lot of his philosophies, you know,
Okay.
philosophies of training.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, and I think and also George, he's kind of an emotional guy in a sense. You know, he
Okay.
used to really base his motivation off of fear, which I think is a smart move.
Yeah.
You know, he
You
used to
talked
say
about
it's
that before. Yeah.
yeah, he used to say it's like it's I train, I get up early because of the fear that my opponent is working harder than me. It's like fear is what pushes me forward,
Yeah.
you know, and George, I think he's just always loved pushing his limits. You know, to the very edge, and he's maxed out his skill work. Like he's been doing Kyokushin karate since he was a little kid, so
Yes.
martial arts has always been a part of his body.
Oh yeah. Guy is phenomenal, man. I think he's doing a I saw something recently, most recently. He's doing a some exercise on a looks like a balance beam kind of thing. What is that thing? It's a bar. You know, like a single bar. You can do pull-ups and chin-ups and everything on it. Have you seen
Yeah,
that one?
yeah, I think he's got some sort of like deal with that. I think
Okay.
maybe he's got like a piece of the company or something. And he's trying to sell it.
Oh,
It's like
okay.
yeah, it's like a calisthenic, all in one sort of machine, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just a bar looking thing, and he's doing all this stuff on it. But I'm like, the guy's in phenomenal shape, man, and just still he eats great. Now, how big is the diet? You know, I know I'm bouncing around on here, but just thinking about GSP because I know a lot of stuff he puts out. He showed him eating all these great meals. You know, look
Mhm.
really healthy and delicious. How important is a diet?
I think what's more important than your diet is your macronutrients or your diet.
Okay.
You know, so we kind of touched on this last time. You know, where there's like all these different types of diets, and you always want
Yeah.
to gear your diet towards your goal. You know, and once you got your goal established and you understand like the type of diet you should have to sustain that goal, you know, a lot of it comes down to hitting your macros, your proteins, carbs, and fats.
Okay.
And the whole idea behind eating clean, a lot of it comes down to trying to reduce inflammation in the body,
Mm, okay.
you know, and to try to not blow out your macros because especially with American foods and you know modern foods, like they're full of like poly and monosaturated fats,
Oh, absolutely.
you
Oof.
know, and there's a lot and there's sugar in fucking everything
That's
right now.
everything. Crazy amount of sugar and everything.
Yeah, and sugar has its advantages, but it also has its disadvantages. And a lot of these things, like oversaturated fats, trans fats, corn syrup, you know, gluten, sugar, a lot of this stuff
Yeah.
creates a lot of systemic inflammation in the body.
Yeah.
And inflammation makes the body more acidic, and your hormonal system, your circulatory system, injuries, wear and tear, inflammation enhances a lot of pain, like a lot of chronic pain gets enhanced from inflammation. So a lot of the times, the reason to eat clean is so you don't feel like shit,
Okay.
like during your training camp, so you can keep the inflammation down as much as possible and you don't screw up your macros. You don't overload on your fats, and then, then you're like gaining weight, like, or you don't eat too much protein, start burning, your own protein, like we talked
Right.
about last time.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to, is making sure like you keep it low inflammatory, lots of phytonutrients, so you have building blocks to rebuild tendons and ligaments and cartilage and fingernails and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and trying to keep the systemic inflammation in your body as low as possible, because also too much systemic inflammation promotes disease in the body.
Okay. Yeah. So I heard something like that. I was looking up on a guy, Dr. Sebi. This is from SCBI. I think that's how you spell his name. And he talks a lot. Oh, he did. He's passed away, but he talked a lot about that, about acidic bodies and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
are you well versed on nutrition also?
I wouldn't say I'm well versed. Like I have a decent grasp of the idea. Um, like there's definitely guys that are way better than me. Like especially when it comes to like supplementation.
Yeah.
Or like me and my girlfriend worked with this guy. I think his name was like Tim. It was a long time ago. He was really good nutritionist, and he knew a bunch of different tricks when it came to like supplements, like how to like adding like chia seeds and certain supplements and BCAAs at a certain time, so you feel better like during the wake up process,
Okay.
and balancing out like the macronutrients. And he used to be able to calculate all this like on pen and paper, and
Wow.
like he would do like this weird like nutrition math. And she had a really good weight cut. Like the weight kind of just came off of her, and she had good energy throughout the whole weight cutting process,
Okay.
for her pro fight. So there's definitely guys that really have like a lot more tips and tricks.
Yeah.
I'm more like a generalist. Like I will tell most guys, like if you need a lot of help with nutrition, I could help you. If you want very specific help, maybe you want to outsource that to someone who just specializes in like weight cut process or proper nutrition.
Makes
Uh,
sense.
yeah, most dietitians and nutritionalists, like especially people with degree in dietetics, a lot of that is to help people who need like a diet for some sort of disease, like Crohn's disease or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know anything. I haven't really explored that much into it. So I would say my knowledge on nutrition is limited, but I have like a general idea. I can definitely get people to lose weight and they'll feel okay doing
Gotcha. You can get them on the right track along with
it.
everything else you're doing. Once again, just like with exercise, a lot of old timers like myself, we think about all the old school workouts. So I'm not going to gym and just going to bench press and curl and squat. And there's so many things that are changing out there that has changed with the weightlifting and building the strength to build speed, nutrition. It's almost a nightmare out there, man. It really is.
Yeah, that's why you gotta use that. I tell people, man, you gotta get on the chat GPT and you gotta start asking it questions and start
Yeah,
refining the information with facts. Because
that's pretty cool.
because you know what a lot of this is? A lot of this comes from perspective and opinion. And
Okay.
I base all of my ideas on evidence and results. There's definitely
Right.
a lot of things that I thought worked really well, and I came across better ideas, and I threw the old way like out the window. I was like, all
Okay.
right, well, this is done. This is the new way I'm going to do it. Because at the end of the day, like nothing else matters but the result.
Good
You
point.
know,
Yeah.
like who gives a shit if like you're right or wrong. The only thing that
Right.
matters is that you provide a result with the people you serve. That's the only
Gotcha.
thing that really matters at the end of the day. and
Wow.
and the athletes don't even care where the information come from. They just need to get better. They just want the result. So I
Right.
think there's a lot of ego wrapped up in people's idea of methodology, and they're not maintaining like a lot of open-mindedness, and they're not
Okay.
checking the facts because there's so much information. And here's the weird thing is that there's a lot of different methodologies, a lot of philosophies, and guess what? They all work, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
some methodologies work better than others, and that's where it gets hard to figure out.
Gotcha. Because I know everyone does the different, either the carnivore, the keto, the all vegetarian, all these different things. But they must be working. Like you said, they all work.
Yeah.
But I know I got a good point from you, and I know it's like it's probably a no brainer. But last time we talked about, you're talking about cutting out alcohol. If you know over 30, stop drinking alcohol. It's
Mhm.
just killing your body. I still like my bourbon, but I only have like a glass on the weekend. Just I'll cut back. I'll get there. I'll get to none instead of having two or three on the weekend. Had just one. One
Yeah.
step at a time, right?
Yeah. Switch to tequila.
Someone else said that. What's the difference between tequila and bourbon? That tequila so much better for
Yeah.
weight loss or nutrition and all that.
Oh man, I don't remember like the science behind it, but I think tequila is the easiest alcohol to metabolize. It has like
Okay.
the least amount of negative side effects, at least physically.
Okay.
Mentally, tequila can make people kind of weird. Like,
That's an understatement, man.
yeah, man, you can get some weird parts of your personality come out with tequila.
Right?
But
See,
But yeah, I
oh,
actually, and I think I remember hearing this. I think who made this idea popular? I think it was like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone. One of those guys was like talking about it a lot. And
really? Drinking
yeah,
tequila. Okay.
yeah. So I would
Jeez.
say whenever if I ever drink liquor, I always go with tequila, and I always go with clear tequila.
Clear sipping. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense. Tequila. Man, I haven't drank that since college. Woo!
yeah, man. Yeah,
I'm
tequila's
looking
where
to
it's
get
at, and it
into
gets the job done a lot faster.
it. You ain't joking, man.
Yeah, all
You
about
ain't
results.
joking. That's right. It's all about results, man. Oh man. Hey, you touched on something here a few seconds ago. Your girlfriend, she's a fighter also.
She's
She
retired
was.
now.
Okay. Okay. Does she still train at all? Do you
Yeah,
guys
she
still
was
train together or
yeah,
anything like that? Or?
not so much. Like she helps me with the business. We're
Okay.
both like a team with that right now.
Okay.
And but she was a pro fighter. We were like teammates for a long time. She actually was Amanda Nunes' sparring partner for
Oh
a long
wow.
time. Yeah, back when Amanda was fighting Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey. She was
Yeah.
the main component of those fight camps, and
Wow.
she actually had her knee torn. She had a PCL and her LCL torn
Ah,
in her
God.
pro debut in the first round, and she fought like two more rounds on that knee tear.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
That's a
and she
tough
had to
woman.
get a reconstructive surgery, two reconstructive surgeries for her knee, and she moved back to Michigan to kind of start over. And
Yeah.
that's when we started like talking again. So we knew each other for a really long time. We were teammates back when I was like a competitor.
Yeah.
And I got her on the nervous system training and was able to get her to return to sport. She had
That's
another
awesome.
pro fight. She won, and yeah, I think she's pretty content with just getting that pro fight back in. I think after that, she just wanted to retire,
Yeah.
and do something else because it's a hard life, man. Being a fighter, like it's a real hard life.
Man, I know you talked about that last time. Just thinking about the stuff that these guys go through, man. Ugh, jeez. 'Cause you really do have to shut down everything in your life to be a fighter, right?
Yeah, yeah. It really takes over your mind, fighting. It's especially when you have like you can when you're a fighter, especially like a competitor, and you're active. You never really have like a time to like relax and enjoy life because there's always like impending doom on the horizon.
Yeah.
You always got
Yeah.
like this upcoming fight, and there's going to be a lot of people there, and you got to sell tickets, and you're going against someone who's also like pretty scary, especially at the
Yeah.
pro level.
Oh yeah.
And so much is riding on you getting these victories, and it's really hard. Like I always tell amateurs, I like or guys who want to get into fighting, I always tell them don't fight. Don't do
Really?
it. Like yeah, it's not. Yeah, I say like try it. If you want to do it, but you got to be willing to delay a lot with your life in order to be successful.
Wow.
And some people are really cut out for it. I mean, there's guys who are really cut out for being Navy SEALs, and fighting
Yeah.
to the death with rifles. Like,
Yeah.
and if you talk to those guys who's like, hey, I want to be a Navy SEAL, I bet you a lot of those guys would be like, don't do it. Like,
Yeah.
this is not for like the faint of heart. Like this is a hard ass thing to take on.
Absolutely. Now, before we go, I want to hear who do you think's your best the best fighter out there, not skill wise, but one has the best uh, health, fitness, the strength, the speed, everything that put it into their body, put all the training in there. Who do you think's got the best?
Um, Currently or from the in the past?
Just anybody. You know what I mean? Who'd you think? Because most guys that know these guys you mentioned, I would think. If it's somebody from old or anything like that.
So I think there's a lot of guys that had a best run. I don't think any fighter can stay at their best for very long. But
Okay.
like, so I would say if we were to say like who had like the best, oh man, who had the best peaks of performance?
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's a hard one, I
Oh
know.
man, there's so many guys. So if we were to cover all these angles, so they had like their nutrition on point, they had really good training methodologies, really good performances, and like there's and like they were very like they're outliers, like they had a legacy in the sport.
Yeah.
Rafael dos Anjos went on a really good run
Okay.
for a period of
Okay.
time.
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe I'm slightly biased because his methodology, like he worked with Nick Hurston and did the nervous system training, but I
Okay.
think he like showed the most improvement out of a fighter in the shortest amount of time that I've ever seen.
Okay.
Where he went from like about like a gatekeeper level fighter into like world champion status, and then went into like legendary status when he destroyed Robbie Lawler.
Oh
Where
man,
he
that
like
was a pro.
solidified himself as like a serious like legacy fighter.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of things. He had a great work ethic. His nutrition was decently solid. He really got it together for like 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Also really entertaining performances. He's really stands out. Of course, George.
Yeah.
I think George might be ahead on that. It's hard to count him out of anything when it comes to like goated fighters. And I would have put TJ up there out, but his thing with EPO kind of
Mhm.
like really taints his legacy and gives his credibility. It kind of gives him a lot of kind of really
Okay.
tarnishes his legacy. Even though
Okay.
I
Yeah.
really think he was on a serious tear for a while when he took out Henan Barao and he was
Yeah.
like just running the division out after he started working with Dwayne Ludwig.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say it's kind of be up there with like George and RDA as far as
Okay.
guys who really had their career and performances on lock to like
Yeah.
to really come up with some phenomenal things. And I think Khabib is in that mix. So I would give it to those three right now.
Okay. I can't argue with you one bit, especially since you threw GSP in there. I was like, okay, got him. All right, good stuff. It's cool to hear that because you know your stuff. So you were in the game, fighting everything, and now you're at a different level of the game. So you can look at a fighter and say, he's missing this, I'm missing that. But you can see these guys who has it all together. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
I
Oh,
used
man.
to do this. Like I used to back when I would kind of dabble around with like some sports betting. Or
Yeah.
I'll be honest, like my buddy, he would do the sports betting. I would give him recommendations and I would give him the money. Be like, yeah, make like give me my cut at the end of it.
That's cool. That's good, man.
But I would watch fighters, I'd watch their training camps and I would make predictions, based on that. Be like, okay, this guy's got weakness in his core.
Okay.
Like if he starts taking body shots, he's going to go down. Like I think he's going to be a little slower in this. Or I'd look at certain guys, I would look at their training camp, watch a lot of footage and kind of watch their cardio and get an idea of what they're working on. Like if I'm not seeing heart rate monitors, if I'm not seeing like consistent interval training, usually guys that are just doing skill work, I'd always put money against.
Really? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Like guys who are doing more, like they were like if I saw them on heart rate monitors, they were doing good methodologies of training. They had strong feet. I would put money on them, on the guys that I think would win.
Okay.
And a lot of times I was right. A lot of times I was wrong too, because MMA is kind of weird like that.
Oh, it's always a lucky guy one day, a lucky punch, lucky anything sometimes.
Yeah. Or you just get like the guy might have a phenomenal camp. The odds will be in his favor, and something went wrong, like in the weight cut, that you just don't hear about till after the fight, or he's on antibiotics because of like a staph infection or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of different variables, that can play a role. I remember comes to mind was, remember Sage Northcutt?
Sage Northcutt. Northcutt.
Yeah,
The last name sounds familiar,
he
but
was
I don't think so.
he was supposed to be like this prodigy that came into the UFC, like a
Was he
karate
the
guy.
karate guy? Oh yes, I was gonna say the karate guy. Yep,
Yeah, karate
yeah,
guy. He looked like Drogo, like a
yep,
younger version of him.
yep. I remember.
And
Yep.
I remember he fought. Oh man, he fought that guy who kicked CM Punk's ass. Ju- Uh,
Which one? No. Oh, he only had the one.
yeah. Oh man, I can't
I
remember
know
his
you.
name.
I can't remember. I can't remember
Yeah,
either.
but Sage got caught in like I think like a guillotine or a darce or something like that. And it wasn't locked into too much, and Sage tapped real fast.
Really, he
And
didn't
I
have
remember
it.
a ton of people were giving, yeah, a ton of people were hating on Sage, calling him like, like he pussed out. He's not working on his jujitsu. Like, he's not like the second coming to Jesus that everyone thought he was. And then
Yeah,
Sage, said like a week later, it's like, I had strep throat going into that fight. Like my throat was swollen shut. Like I was
yeah,
barely able to train properly. And when he got the choke in, it was just too much. And
yeah.
I couldn't tap in those things. Like a lot of fighters have a lot of problems that they're not talking about when they get in there.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah, there's a ton of variables, and it's too bad because like no one really wants to hear like the excuses. Everyone just wants
yeah,
them to perform regardless. But I always look at that and be like, yeah, I'd probably tap too. I probably would have called the fight off if I had freaking strep throat. You
yeah.
know?
These guys, they're looking for that payday. After all that stuff, they got a lot of guys they got to pay. So it's like, oh, geez,
Yeah.
I would have too, man. I would have walked in and tapped.
Yeah, I would've- yeah,
Oh
definitely.
man. Oh, Quentin, this has been awesome, brother. You know what? I appreciate you taking this time again. Where can everybody find you again? Give me all your stuff where everybody can find you and look you up, man.
Yeah, so my biggest platform to get a hold of me is on Instagram. At Quintin Quintin .Torres 36. You can find me. I put a lot of my training out there on my Instagram. I'm always like answering people's questions, trying to engage the community, help people out as much as I can. So yeah, that's like my main point of contact for guys to find me, or they can drop me an email at QT Trains You. So QTTRAINSYOU at gmail.com. So
Okay.
if anyone needs some serious help, maybe they want to get into program or they want more information, feel free to just drop me an email. I'd help them out, no problem.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you, man. Guys, listen up, guys. Take him up on those offers, man. If you look at his videos, you'll see the stuff he's doing is real. He's not making things up as he goes. The guy knows what he's talking about. But check him out. But Quentin, brother, I appreciate you so much for taking this time again. And man, I hope we can do a number 3. I really do.
Oh yeah, yeah. These are fun, man. I like doing these. I was actually after our last one, I was talking about them. I was like, damn, I gotta do my own podcast. Like these are. Yeah, I can see why you do it, man. This is like it's a good time.
It is, man. It's a lot of fun getting to know somebody and
Mhm.
the information you have. And like I said before, I'm not just trying to blow sunshine up your ass at all, man, but I'm serious. The way you break the stuff down is perfect. Because a lot of guys, I've seen a lot of guys out there and I watch a lot of stuff and I'm confused as hell. But listening to you talk about this stuff, I'm like, all right. I could try that. I know what he's talking about, man. But you keep it up, brother. Keep it up. We're going to do a number 3, hopefully soon. And we'll break down some more fighters because I love talking to you about UFC fighters, man.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm always down. I'm always down for this.
All right, brother. You're awesome, man. But guys, once again, that's Quintin Torres, the sports performance specialist. Check him out on all the information he gave you there. And with that, we will talk to you soon, Quintin. I appreciate you more than you know, brother.
All right, appreciate it, Tony. Man, always a good
All
time.
right, brother. Take care of yourself. Talk to you soon. Bye.
You too, buddy.
Oh, man.